What's up guys, this is Heat. This is going to be a build guide video for the build I use in the 1 month hardcore flashback league. And the build is basically an Iron Will Blood Magic Incinerate Marauder. So this build ripped at level 93 in the hardcore flashback league to an invader boss. I think its name is Azakati. He's a giant skeleton who does like one slam that shakes the screen. He literally one-shot me, so keep in mind that this is post-rip footage. However, this build did do very high-level content. Wasteland was the highest map I did, which is, I think, a level 80 map, so it's more than capable of doing end-game content. The basis for this build is I wanted to make a build that was extremely tanky for the flashback league, because these types of events tend to be extremely dangerous when all mods are activated, so I wanted something with an extremely high life pool. The best way to go about achieving a high life pool, in my opinion, is you pick up blood magic, stack a lot of strength, and then spec into a large number of max life passives in the tree. Because we're going to stack a lot of strength in this build, I thought that Iron Will would be a really strong choice to go with. And essentially the way that Iron Will works is that it takes the melee damage bonus that you get from strength and it applies it to spells instead of melee physical damage. So in turn, what ends up happening is that strength double dips as a defensive and offensive stat when you go Iron Will, because it gives you life and then it gives you increased spell damage for your spells. Initially, I was going to actually play this build as EK, but I was leveling as Incinerate, and I had never played Incinerate before, and I was quite liking it, so I just decided to stay with Incinerate instead of going with EK. However, you can use the exact same tree with some little item modifications in order to play EK, so if you wanted to, you could actually make this build entirely EK. The general gameplay flow is as follows. You use Whirling Blades as a movement utility skill for positioning and for moving quickly, and also to proc Fortify. So that's one reason this build actually uses daggers instead of wands or maces, because I wanted that extra defensive layer of having Fortify when I use Whirling Blades. Once you put yourself in a good position, then you just cast Incinerate until everything melts, and things will melt quickly because it does a lot of damage. Other offensive skills this build utilizes are Vol Haste, which increases your general kill and clear speed, and Vol Lightning Trap, which leaves shot ground and allows you to kill things much faster. I also chose to use Flame Totem as added damage to single target and as another defensive layer because it can de-aggro enemies off you. Lastly, Blood Rage is used to generate frenzy charges for an increase to your DPS, and Enduring Cry is used to generate endurance charges for an extra layer of physical damage mitigation. The biggest strength of this build is that it's extremely tanky while also having a really high DPS output. We're talking about 8,600 life, 9,000 armor without granite, and then we have some leech mechanisms on our gear that allows us to further increase our tankiness. Its biggest weakness is that its single target damage isn't really optimized. If I was doing a tough boss or if a beyond boss spawn, I would often switch out GMP for faster projectiles in order to increase my DPS. The general theme of this skill tree is a lot of life, strength, and then secondary probably life regen and a little bit of damage. The Scion Life Wheel is obviously an important source for an increase to maximum life because there is a lot of life there and it's all concentrated, so you definitely want to pick that up in this build. I also opted to dip into the Duelist tree because there's a lot of life, there's some damage there, and there's a lot of life regen, which this build has a lot of, and ultimately it ended up being around 720-730 life regen per second, which helps your character be even more tanky. Now, obviously, because this is a blood magic build, you do want to pick up that keystone and the life behind it, because those are very strong passives for life. And then other passives like Juggernaut also help because it increases your life and your armor. So the general theme of this build is a lot of defense and a lot of strength, which helps with defense and which helps with the damage of your Incinerate through Iron Will. In terms of jewels, I used one unique jewel in this build, and it's called Clear Mind, and it gives you spell damage when you have no mana reserved, and it actually applies to blood magic build, so it's a very, very strong unique jewel to boost your DPS. Other things you want to look at on jewels are life, projectile speed, projectile damage, fire damage, things that increase the DPS of your Incinerate. I personally was looking for life and projectile speed because projectile speed is really important for Incinerate. It increases its reach and it allows you to clear faster. I'll post the skill tree in the description so you can take a closer look at it. As an Iron Will build, the general theme of your gear should be life, resistances, and strength. In this link setup, I had Vol, Lightning Trap, multiple traps, increased duration, and Enduring Cry. Increased duration helps with increasing the length of shot ground. If you're going to use a dagger with this build, I recommend increased spell damage and flat damage to spells. Also, attack speed helps because it'll allow you to travel faster with Whirling Blades. I had a Whirling Blade Fortify setup because I thought it's going to be an important component to defense in order to survive when all mods were going to be in effect. So I think that's actually very important in this build. One thing to note about Incinerate is you want to quality that gem up as fast as you can because it's very important. It increases its projectile speed, which in turn increases the length that it covers. So basically it helps you clear faster, and it's an indirect increase to DPS because its reach allows you to kill more enemies. For the boot slot, I went with the unique boots, Alberon's Warpath. These are pretty strong because it gives you an increased percentage to strength. In this case, it's 18, which is pretty high. So that helps with life and it helps with DPS. For the chest piece, this build can work with either Belly of the Beast or with Lightning Coil. I couldn't get a Lightning Coil in this league, so I settled for Belly of the Beast, and it's pretty strong because it gives you a lot of life. One thing to note is I actually don't like using the Life Leech gem in builds. I feel it's a wasted gem slot. However, I still wanted the Life Leech mechanic, so the way I did that is I got a Doriani's Invitation, which gives you Life Leech based on fire damage, and also Edziri's Promise, which gives you some nominal Life Leech. I'll post a link to my gear and my link setups in the description so you guys can check that out whenever. I hope you guys enjoyed the build. Thanks for watching.